Okay, so the first thing we're going to be reviewing, basically, is how to plug it into our calculator. And so how we get to that table. So how we get to a table, you're putting that right here. And so remember the buttons we click. The first one is y equals, and you can write that in the color, whatever, if you were using different colors. I'm going to circle y equals in blue. So I'm going to outline this in blue. So to graph something, we click y equals. Then we type the equation in. And what do we always use, no matter if the variable is k for Kamiya or j for Jabari, what's always the letter we use when we type it into our calculator? X. And so that's this button right here. So make sure you remember that button's what I click for X. And for square, to square it, you just click that button right there. Type square. So we type in our equation using that. Then we press second. So these are just the buttons you press. Second and graph. And so that's how we look at a table of a equation. So to look at a table, those are the buttons we press. We've done it before, but I want to make sure we remember. And so our practice equation we're going to be using is right here. It's our example. And so in your calculator, everyone should have a calculator so you are familiar with typing this in. You can use this method through your entire test today. And so the thing is you need to remember what buttons to press. So you can answer probably 90% of your assessment today using this function of your calculator.
You can get it at least a 90.
What? Yeah, at least get a 90 on your test if you remember this. And so we're going to use the equation x squared minus 6x plus 5. So you're going to type that into that y equals and follow this. So we're going to put y equals, take that equation in, x squared minus 6x plus 5, and then press second graph. The only thing is people struggled last class because they didn't, you can't use this. So maybe throughout today, practice trying that out. And so you're typing that in, you're following the directions, like y equals. So you're pressing that y equals button. And then you're typing the equation, x squared minus 6x plus 5. And then pressing second and graph. And you're filling in this table. So when x is 0, you're just filling in the table with the y values. So you're scrolling through the table once you see it. Just follow this. So second graph. You click graph. So click second and then graph this. And so also this is another reason just it'd be easy to have your calculator in case something goes wrong. Like some of them are in Spanish, some of them are in different languages. So you're
right.
Yeah, right when x is 0, what's y? So you're writing that right on your paper. So on your calculator, you're typing this equation in, pressing second graph, and you should see a table on your calculator.
No, I was thinking some of it might be in Spanish.
Oh no, some calculators somehow got in Spanish and things like that. And so that's why it might be better to have your own calculator. That way you can set it up and make sure it's good before you go into the test. When you go right into the test, you're only going to just have whatever calculator. It could be not one that you're not even used to. It could be one of Mr. Morrison's or completely different calculators.
So if we get a calculator in Spanish, there's nothing we can do about that?
There's no one's going to be able to play around with it. That's why I would make sure to just have your own calculator. Not that Spanish really matters.
But I don't have an offline awesome.
If you have one, that's why I'm saying I would get one. Even if it's an older sibling, just start like, or you know someone who's even if you're in geometry, if you know someone in geometry who has one, just so you can have it on your own test and practice with it.
So if we get one now, we'll be able to go to high school.
Yep, and you'll need it you'll need it in college. Like I used that same calculator all through college. And if you're doing, I was a psychology major, and I had to take math classes, and I used that calculator. So like, you'll need that calculator forever. It's never going to change. Okay, so when you look at the graph, right? Let's fill this in. When x is 0, what's your y? 5. Good. So you're filling it in all the way. Let me get to the sheet. So it should be 5, 0, negative 3, negative 4. Beautiful. So does everyone see that on their calculator? Cool. And so we're just going to go over what each thing is. So the first thing is y-intercept. And so if we have our y-intercept, what do we know the x-coordinate always has to be? 0. So no matter what, we know our x-coordinate is always 0. So when our x is 0, what is our y? 5. So we know that this one right here is your y-intercept. 0, 5. We're going to be learning about word problems. Do we remember what word problems represent, like what y-intercept represents in word problems? Initial. What else? Starting. So anything that indicates initial, starting, anything like that, we know is our y-intercept. So we know all we have to do is type on our handy-dandy calculator and find where our x is 0. We also know it's just our c, right? That c is our y-intercept. Any questions so far? Hopefully this should be mostly review. What about your x-intercepts? When y equals 5. Good. So when my y equals 0, we see there's 1, 0 and 5, 0, right? So these two are our x-intercepts. 1, 0 and 5, 0. What else do we call x-intercepts? Everyone got this question wrong on their Yes, so when they're asking for the zeros, people automatically started factoring. You can factor and make them equal to 0, or you can just type it on your calculator and figure out when y is 0, right? And so x-intercepts, we're going to be talking about it in a second, but it's like when something hits the ground or lands. So you can write that right there, when it hits the ground or when it lands. That usually refers to our x-intercepts. And you'll see that in a few minutes on that second example. The last thing is our vertex. I'm going to put that over here. So the vertex is that baby bump, right? Miss Klein. Where's Miss Klein? Right here. See how it goes from -3 to -4 back to -3? That middle one is your vertex. So right here, your vertex is, here's Miss Klein. She's 3, -4. Baby bump. What is the x-coordinate of your vertex called? Axis of symmetry. And so let's look to see if it's the min or the max. I look at the A, the leading coefficient. What's the leading coefficient here? 1, right? And so it's positive. Patricia, she's positive. And so if she's positive, is that a min or a max? A min, right? So that would be my min. And so we'll see things like the highest point or the maximum, things like that are going to refer to our vertex. But it's also our little baby bump. And so you can find all those different things right on that calculator. The only thing is that sometimes the vertex and things like that won't be there because if they're decimal answers, which could happen, if they're decimal answers, you can't really use a calculator because it won't really work that way. So what I would do is when you're looking, most of your test today is multiple choice. So when you're looking through the answers and you see all the answers are whole numbers, you know that you can just use the calculator.
How did you print this out?
Google the outline of a TI-84 plus calculator. Does everyone have this down? That's our notes for our calculator.
Can I get some water?
Let me go through the next one and then I'll let you go. All right, next note is right here, and if you didn't finish, I'll give you my book. So I'll give you my book if you didn't finish. So the next one is right here. And so this is an example of a word problem. And so we're going to just make sense of it using this word problem right here. Let me make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay, so it says a volleyball player hits a ball over the net. She hits it from a starting height. What does starting mean? We're probably going to be finding. Y-intercept. So you're going to color that in the first color. Starting height, we know, refers to your y-intercept. When you're looking for your y-intercept, what could we plug in? What is our x-coordinate? 0. So you could type this into your calculator and find what x is 0, or, so we don't have to go through all that, it's always our constant. So what number is our constant here? 3. So we know that 0, 3 is your y-intercept. So right here, here's my volleyball player. Does anyone play volleyball? Here's Alana right here. Her little hair right there. She's at 3 feet, so she's obviously bending. That's really short. So there she is. She's my starting point, so she's at 3. So on the y-intercept, I plotted her head at 3.
So here,
Yeah, right there. And so the y-intercept is their starting. So it's like how high off the ground did you start? So you're looking for things like that to refer if it's your y-intercept. So right here, what number would I put? 3. It says the ball reaches its maximum. What's another word for maximum?
the highest.
The highest, well, maximum would be your highest point. What do we call that? Starts with a V. Vertex, right? So we're looking for the vertex. And so first we need to figure out what's the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. The x-coordinate, what's your x-axis say? Right here, time in seconds. So we know that this has to be time, the x-coordinate. And what does your y-coordinate have to be?
The height.
Height. And so they're looking for the maximum height, so that would be your y-coordinate, feet in blank seconds. So you could type this into your calculator, but I'm pretty sure this ends up getting you a decimal. So it wouldn't come up actually on that calculator, so we need to use the equation. What equation did we learn to find the axis of symmetry?
Negative b over
Beautiful, negative b over 2a. So that's to get your how many seconds does it take Alana to get it in the maximum height? So what is your b? Good. So I have negative 24 over 2, and what's your a? Negative 16. And so when you multiply that and divide it, you end up getting 0.75. So when I do that math, my x-coordinate and my vertex is 0.75. That means Alana in 0.75 of a second got it at its maximum height. So it looks something like that. That's your axis of symmetry. So right here, I'll put 0.75. Maybe right axis of symmetry. To get your y-coordinate, what do we have to do? Plug it in. So let's rewrite the equation. Remember, you can type this right into your calculator. Plus 24 plus 3. And instead of the x's, what am I going to put in for x? 0.75, right? So you can type that right into your calculator. Not the y equals, but the regular calculator. And so when you do that and you put it in your calculator, what does your answer end up being? Yeah, it ends up being 12. Make sure you put 0.75. You put 3 in the parentheses. Yeah, so it ends up being 12. So that means 12 is your what? Did you square it? Not your x, this is your x-coordinate. This ends up being your y-coordinate, your vertex, which is called your what? Max, right? So I would go to 12, and that's the highest she can hit that ball. There's Alana's ball. And she hit it at the max at 12. And so when I scroll up, height of 12 feet. And so we know how to do this. It's just kind of making sense of what's there. And so the last thing is when it hits the ground. And if you draw a picture like this for each of your problems, I'll give you extra credit. So
for each of your problems, they're multiple choice. So if you can show me that you at least know what's going on, I'll give you at least partial credit. And so then I want to know when it hits the ground. So that means when it hits the ground, what is that considered? X-intercept, right? So your x-intercept is basically when something is 0 or hits the ground. Because no one can hit her ball, right? Alana is unstoppable. So she hits the ground and then she gets the point. So she gets the point. What 3 ways did we learn that we can find the x-intercepts? This is on your test and no one could answer this. Yeah. Completing the square, that's the one no one got. Completing the square. What else?
Factoring.
Factoring. And what else? It's a formula. Quadratic formula, right? And I'll give you the quadratic formula. And so, however you want to solve it, you can. I would always use the quadratic formula. You can always remember, use the calculator, but you're going to get a decimal answer, God bless you. And so because we're going to get a decimal answer, it's not going to show up in that table.
Wait, what was the question to this?
This is the last part where it says the ball hits the ground. How many seconds does it hit the ground? And so to find where it hits the ground right here, that would be my x-intercept. And so what are the 3 ways we learned how to find my x-intercept? Completing the square, factoring, and quadratic formula. I'm going to use the quadratic formula. And so does everyone remember how to put it into your calculator, that easy way? And so a lot of people try to look at their notebook to figure this out. Make sure we remember how to do it. And I'll do it over here. Remember, you click math, that button. And then you scroll until you see at the top it says frac. Some of you guys don't have it. So if you're using your own calculator, this is when you would have to either do it by hand or figure out how to do it. But look at this for now. So you're going to math, you're going to, at the top bar it says frac, like that. And then there's a button that looks like this, N/D, and you're clicking that. And
I don't see it, but it's
see up here. And then you're clicking N/D. And you're just typing the quadratic formula. So it's at the top. So right, go to there, and then right there. So that's so remember, quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2n.
Where do you see N/D?
Are you on the fraction bars? Look at the top, all the way to the left. Taylor, you know where it is?
Oh, this is weird.
Oh, you found it? Cool. Good. And then do the other one too.
What do you mean?
That's not right.
I'm sorry.
Not
What do you mean?
number all the way at the bottom,
Okay.
and then you go out.
Minus.
Yeah, so change the minus to plus. So now you're putting it in your calculator, but now we're plugging in our A, B, and C. So our A was negative 16, our B was 24, and our C was, what was it, 3? And so all you're doing is every time we plug something in, you're just putting it in parentheses. So I would write negative, and instead of B, what are you going to put in your calculator on the numerator? 24. And just start with plus or minus, doesn't matter which one. And then each time you plug it in, you're just using parentheses. B squared. Second. Yeah, second.
Why do you do plus and minus?
Just do one or the other. Yeah, do one or the other. You're going to do both. Minus 4, and then A is negative 16, and C is 3. All over.
I was doing parentheses.
Yes. Make sure you do parentheses.
Wait, how do you do square root?
Second.
Okay, I think I did this on
Second.
Wait. No, Miss Taylor, how do you keep it from like stopping? I got negative 0.116.
And now get the other one. Remember, I told you you're going to get it. You're going to get, that's the first answer.
Oh.
to go back and get the second one, highlight it. For some reason, I think you clicked the side button too. And so you're doing the minus and the plus, getting those. Does everyone know how to, instead of rewriting it all over again, you can just highlight it.
Are we supposed to get a decimal?
That's why I couldn't find it using my
What's that red sign we put up on the test? That's Alana.
It's a lot. Yep, so what were the two answers you guys got? Uh-huh. And what was the other one?
I got 1.6.
And so we're talking about Alana, right? Can she hit a ball in negative seconds? Does that make sense? This problem? No. So we would just use the positive answer, which is 1.61.
Where did you get the decimal?
This one? The other one? Highlight it and change that minus sign to a plus sign. So you did the minus and you got that answer. So all you have to do is positive like that. There it is. Does that make sense?
So you want us to do what?
So that's your answer, right? That's your answer. At 1.61 seconds, that's when she hit the ground. So here's Anna, here's her ball. At 1.61, like a little after 1.5, that's when her ball hit the ground. Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't it be point
No.
1, 2?
Because it's okay. And if we're talking about X, you're can't hit a ball in negative seconds. So does everyone
So
understand
you
why?
put it around it?
I just put 1.61. It doesn't matter. Your test is multiple.
the 6.
This- The first one, like 1.6, 1.6.
Point 1.
Oh, this negative 0.12.
Look at it. You ain't never had it. But you didn't do it right. Jump it down.
Okay, so we're gonna go over one example together, and then you're gonna do the other two on your own. So,
What does it say? Is it this one?
last 30 minutes.
What you been doing?
Got it, man. How many questions is it?
Not many. So this is a now we're trying, most of the problems on your assessment have to do with this. So if you understand this, then you're
I
good.
hate word problems.
I know, a lot of us don't like words. If we remember the easy ways to do it, then you're fine. Yep, so that's the answer. Come on, let's go over this one problem. Did everyone get a guided notes back? Alright, did everyone else get this back? Thank you. Alright, so we're going over one problem together. Okay, so this says, it's the one problem that I'll give you time to practice, and then the last 30 minutes, you guys will have that assessment. A ball is thrown into the air. The height above the ground, h, measured in feet, at any given time after the ball is thrown, t, measured in seconds, can be modeled using this quadratic function. First, I want to draw a picture of what's happening. So someone is right here. Here's Taylor. Yep, there she is. She's throwing a ball in the air, right? Here she is. The ball is in the air, and it hits the ground. So first of all, what is the x coordinate here? Or t, because they're using t right here. What is my x coordinate t? Time, right? So it's saying time in what? Time in seconds. So first I need to label what's going on. Time in seconds. So my x coordinate or my t is time in seconds. And your h of t, or your h, what did that stand for? Height. So height above the ground. So right here is her height above the ground. There we go. So there's a picture of what the situation is. First, I need to figure out what am I even trying to figure out. So there's Taylor throwing the ball into the air and it hits the ground, right? So first it says label what this is. What does T stand for? We already found that. What was it? Time in seconds. This is a question on your quiz today. This easy. Time in seconds. And what's your H of T stand for? Height in feet. Then it says, from what height above the ground was the ball thrown? What would we be looking for starting height? For y-intercept. You guys need to understand that that's for y-intercept. And so what is the y-intercept of this function? 32, right there. So we would know that this would be, she's 32 feet above the ground. Basically, Taylor's got to be standing on something because there's no way homegirl's 32 feet. Does everyone make sense of that? Like what we're looking for. Y-intercept is that C. How many seconds after the ball was thrown did it reach its maximum height? Maximum means we're looking at the what? The vertex. And so if it's asking for the seconds, would that be your x coordinate or vertex or your y?
Y.
X, right? So your x coordinate, that's your x right here. You're looking for your axis of symmetry.
Negative B.
Beautiful. Negative b over 2a. Remember that you can always use the calculator, type the equation in, but this one ends up being a decimal, so it won't come out in your calculator. But on the test, you're always able to just type it into y equals and find the bounce, right? That's what it is. So let's figure out what is negative b over 2a. So what's your b? 16. And your a?
Negative 16.
Negative 16. So I get negative 16 over, what's 2 times negative 16?
About 148.
Make your, right here, divide them. You both love. What do you end up getting? 0.5 or 1/2, right? So that means at a half a second, it reached its maximum height. So right here, I would know that this would be a half a second. Then to get the maximum height, what coordinate would that be? What do I do to get the y coordinate of your vertex? Plug it in, plug it in. So I'm taking the regular equation, so which is negative 16 plus 16 plus, what was the, plus 30. Remember, you can always factor or however you want to find the x-intercepts later on. But first, what do I do? What do I plug in for my x coordinate? 0.5. Remember, you can type this right into your calculator. Does that make sense? If Taylor started at 32 feet, she threw the ball up, and the highest it got was 36. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So make sure it also makes sense, right? So at 36 feet, that was her maximum height.
And then for the last one, the x.
Yeah, because it's when it hits the ground. So when it hits the ground, that would be your x-intercept.
Oh.
So what things can we do to find our x-intercepts? Completing the square, what else?
Quadratic formula.
Quadratic formula, factor, you could type it right into your calculator and find where your y is 0. That would work too. Whichever you guys want to do. Remember, you might get a negative and a positive answer, but can Taylor throw a ball in negative seconds? No, right? There's no way she could throw a ball. So we know it's the positive answer. And so you can use the quadratic formula. And I'll give you the quadratic formula. But remember how to type it into your factor. You can factor. Negative 16 goes into all of those. So you can sit and factor, make them equal to 0. Remember, this is a lot of, like, completing the square. All these things are a lot of information. We've done this unit since the new year. So you want to make sure, when I say there's an assessment, you've got to make sure to look over that survival guide before. Did anyone get the answer?
Not yet.
Not yet. Then the quadratic formula.
Is it for the
I got
first one? I
two.
got negative one.
I got 2 for the negative, for the subtract.
You got 2.
Oh, and I got 1 for the positive, the addition.
Cool. So which one was positive? 2, right? And so since 2 was positive, 2 seconds would be when it hits the ground. And I give you this on your test, just I wanted to show you. This is your formula sheet you get in your milestone. So they give you the standard form, vertex form, and quadratic form. And so we know when you got it, you ended up getting 2, so that means in 2 seconds it hit the ground. What would that be considered? X-intercept. Cool.
You want us to draw pictures, like, for real?
If you draw a picture on your test and you get it wrong, I'll give you partial credit. I just want to, it will make your life easier in the end. I know it's corny,
Thank you.
but drawing a picture of is really important to me. Okay, so your homework basically is, I'm not giving an IXL for this one, so it's the next 2 pages. So there are 2 different, number 2 and number 3, it's, you're doing the exact same thing. So 30 minutes before the period is over would be what? Math students. 30 minutes before 11:05 is what time?
Yes.
10:45?
Not 10:45.
No.
10:35. So at 10:35, we're going to take our quiz. So you're doing those last 2 problems. You can work in a group. You can work. I have the answer key up here so you guys can stamp. And then at 10:35, we're going to come together and take that assessment. Sure. And I have the practice one. If you wanted to do the practice one and do the other 2 at home, that's fine. Did anyone want to do that?
The practice one, that's what
Yes. So if you this is similar too.